All right, greetings, salutations, welcome, and oh yeah, the spookiest of Halloweens tomorrow. All in fun, all in joy, and I'm glad to be here. And as usual, I have this illustrious panel of discussion makers here with me. Not troublemakers, discussion makers, we'll call them. So welcome to ACIM Talks with Reverend Jim. It is Monday evening, October 30th in 2023. So I think these are exciting times, don't you folks? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we thought we'd get old and everything would be the same old, and we've seen it all. And yet, hold on a minute. These may be exciting times, and some paradigm shifts that I hope we're moving toward, and some shifts that may give us a more peaceful world than that. Anyhow, did y'all get the agenda for the evening?
Yes.
Then you see on there, I have a gentleman who is, his name is Stephen Schwartz, and very highly educated guy and part of an organization called ARE. Are you from Association for Research?
That's Edgar Casey's.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't get the acronym correct, but yes, it's the Edgar Casey organization. I didn't put together a bio or anything to show you about Edgar Casey, but have you all heard of him?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
He's mentioned in the new edition of the Course in Miracles.
When you say new edition, are
the CE edition?
Okay.
Yeah, the new edition, the newest edition of the Course in Miracles. Edgar Casey is mentioned in it.
By the way, Dee, how many editions of the CE edition of the CE version are there?
2.
So this is the latest one. I'm thinking
he's mentioned in both of them. There's really not much change between the first one was a hardcover, the second one is a soft cover.
Yeah.
There's not. He's mentioned the same in both.
Okay, and not mentioned at all in the FIP versions of A Course in Miracles, but nonetheless well known as a spiritual teacher and healer and philosopher and all of that. So this is ACIM Talks, and I just brought this video up as another example of there being only one truth, whether you hear it in church or science or philosophy or the arts. And I think this similarity helps us to see clearly the Course in Miracle principle of being able to see content no matter what the form. So as usual, I thought I'd play 10 minutes of this video. I think you'll enjoy it and get some deep insights from it. By the way, next year, I'm planning to put on Zoom right now what I called ACIM Cinema. And some of these videos that we only see short clips from, well, maybe we can get together and pass around the popcorn and watch some full-length videos. They're certainly available on YouTube or whatever, but watch them and discuss them and see relationships. And to me, I'm trying to show God's plan of salvation actually at work, and therefore point back to the truth of what A Course in Miracles discusses. To me, that's the connection I'm trying to make, okay? At any rate, I won't belabor it any longer unless you have some comments or questions. I'll put the video on about 10 minutes worth, okay? Yes?
Sounds good.
All right, good deal. Let me get to that and cue it up for video. And come here and here.
Happens. The answer is that to begin the answer, I want to tell you a little story about Max Planck. Max Planck, father of quantum mechanics, was a man who didn't give a lot of interviews. In January of 1931, he gave an interview to the Observer newspaper. And the reporter who did the interview, one of the few that he did, said, "You and Einstein are the most famous scientists in the world. What have you learned?" Now, I don't know what he thought Planck was going to say. Something about atoms and molecules, maybe? I don't know. But instead, what Planck said was, "What I've learned is that consciousness is causal and fundamental. You cannot get behind consciousness. Space-time," this is the one, you can hear the sphincters tightening. "Space-time arises from consciousness, not consciousness from space-time." And in 1944, at a physics conference in Pisa, Italy, he stood up and he said, "I have spent my entire life studying atoms and molecules, but I'm sorry to tell you they don't exist. They are expressions of consciousness." So the reason that Edgar Cayce is important, other than, there's wonderful stories, and I will share a couple of these things, but is that because he is so extreme in his abilities, that you can see clearly what Planck was trying to say. Or as Edgar Cayce put it, mind is the builder. And he says it over and over again. And in fact, he talks a great deal about what it is he's doing. And that makes a difference because this is something that you can access. When you read a lot of stuff about consciousness, you read stuff about sending and receiving and signals. I read these books and these things. I'm sorry, there is no sending, there is no receiving, there is no signal. What's happening is you open to non-local consciousness. Now, most of the time, we are overwhelmed by the sensorial impressions that flood in to our neuroanatomy. It's hot, it's cold, it's dark, it's light. There's a smell, there's no smell, it's noisy, it's quiet, all that stuff. It's constantly flooding in. And it overwhelms this non-local aspect. And the way you get at the non-local aspect is that you have to be able to attain and sustain intentioned, focused awareness. That's why they teach meditation in martial art dojos, in Catholic monasteries, in Buddhist monasteries, in Japanese monasteries. That's why every religion has a part, as part of its program, teaching people how to attain and sustain intentioned, focused awareness. Now, when we look at the research data, what we see, for instance, with remote viewing, I'm one of the people that created remote viewing, is that meditators routinely do better than non-meditators. If you look at the healing literature, the scientific literature, you see that meditators do better than non-meditators. Why? Because meditation is a technique for attaining and sustaining intentioned, focused awareness. And when you do that, then the sensorial flood retreats into the background. And what in religion is called the still small voice comes out. And the reason that Edgar Cayce went into a trance is that's how he attained intentioned, focused awareness, and it is also how he disassociated. You know, in the pre-technological cultures, down to the present day, cultures, as a proposition, made an effort to identify highly gifted people and to train them and recruit them and put them to work in temples or spiritual centers to provide information that would give guidance to the policymakers of that culture. The 7 oracles of the ancient Greek world are an example. In fact, the oldest remote viewing that we know about, that's on record, and it was done exactly the way we would do it today, is in the 46th chapter of Herodotus's Histories of the World. Herodotus is the first historian. And he wrote a book called the Histories of the World, and he describes a circumstance in the 5th century BCE involving Croesus, the king of the Lydians. Lydia is a part of Turkey now, but at that time was an independent kingdom. And Croesus got wind that the Persians, under Cyrus, were about to attack him. And so what to do? And Herodotus reports this story that I'm about to tell you. And so Croesus, no dummy he, created 7 embassies, 7 little teams of people, and he told them to go to the 7 oracles of the ancient world and to wait for the 100th day. And on the 100th day, they were to ask, what is Croesus, son of Alyattes, king of the Lydians, doing at this time? Outbound remote viewing. And so the 7 teams went out. The only one whose answer we know, because it was the correct one, was the oracle at Delphi. Now, Delphi is an example of what I'm talking about. This was an oracle that was built, the temple was built over a cleft in the earth in which some, not all, but many researchers believe hydrocarbons bubbled up and had a psychoactive, it was like a drug. It was like taking, I don't know, LSD. And young women, the Pythonesses they were called, would sit in this kind of tripod, cat's cradle thing, and these gases would bubble up, and these girls would go into a kind of altered state of consciousness. And you could ask them questions and they would speak, just like Edgar Cayce. So on the 100th day, the team that went to the oracle at Delphi went in, and before they could even speak, the Pythonist said, "I can count the sands of time, the 100 days. I see the great ocean," that they had traveled from Lydia to where the Delphic oracle was. "I see a great bronze urn, boiling water, and a hare and a tortoise being cut up and thrown into the pot, and a great bronze lid." Now, that didn't make any sense to the people that were listening to it, but they wrote it all down and they took it back, and when they got back to Lydia and they told Croesus what the oracle at Delphi had said, he bowed down and gave obeisance, because he had said to himself, you know, if they say Croesus is sitting on his throne issuing orders or edicts, well, of course, he's the king. So instead he had a tripod brought in a great bronze urn, and a hare and a tortoise, and he cut them up and threw them into the water, the boiling water. That technique actually is an outbound experiment. So people have been doing this for a long time, millennia. Remote viewing is not new in the sense that what is new is that we design protocols that meet scientific standards. But the idea of opening to non-local consciousness is not new. The talking idol of Siwa, an Egyptian oracle, also talking idol. Note here that all of these, the person that is speaking disassociates. It's not them speaking, it's the God speaking. Or in Edgar Cayce's, it's the source, as they called it in the beginning, the higher self. It's a form of disassociating. So you are a fundamentalist evangelical Christian, intensely involved with this. You read the Bible through from beginning to end every year of your life for years. You teach Sunday school. All of your social life is tied up in evangelical fundamentalist Christianity, and you're talking about what? Reincarnation? Give me a break. You disassociate. And that's why he went into a trance. That plus they started with the hypnosis. And that was the way he got into it in the beginning, but the continuation. I was lucky enough when I went to the ARE in 1965 to get to know many of the people who had known it. He was dead, of course, he died in 1945. But I got to know many of the people who knew him, and they told me that the last 14 years of his life, he was able to do the readings without going into a trance, but he kept doing it anyway because that's what people expected. But that he could actually just look at you. And there was one example, he got arrested, and he and Hugh Lin were put in jail, and he went around to each of the prisoners and basically gave them a little reading, just standing there looking at them. So he is important because what he's trying to show us in all of this, and he says this explicitly, is that if you can attain and sustain intention-focused awareness, you can get in touch with this part of yourself. As a scientist, the two big questions, for which I do not have answers, I'm sorry. What is consciousness? What is information? Because what we're looking at is not a signal. The way Edgar Cayce describes it, because the metaphor worked
We're done here.
So is that pretty heavy stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of things discussed, in my opinion. What did you find relevant in that 10 minutes or 12 minutes of talk? First of all, ARE, Association for Research and Enlightenment, I think it stands for. But what was he talking about fundamentally, and giving examples of what are oracles? Kathleen. Hi, Sherilyn, welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Kathleen, are you there? Are you looking up oracle for us? Oh, you're not, oh,
She said 1 minute.
oh,
One
okay. Anybody else know what an oracle is?
It's someone that's very wise.
Yeah, I mean, like superhuman wise. It's like if you flip open A Course in Miracles, it'll always happen to be something of interest to you. Remember I said David Hoffmeister used to use it as an oracle, and so he didn't read it beginning to end. He just opened up at random. And for some coincidence, it seemed to be information he needed to hear at that time, at that place, at that moment. And so an oracle is a wise person, entity that's superhuman wise. Not just wise, superhuman. What'd you find out, Kathleen?
It's the definition is a priest or a priestess acting as a medium through whom advice or prophecy was sought from gods in classical antiquity.
Okay. So do you see how he was going back to the first historian? I forget the name he said, and talking about the 7 oracles that they would consult on matter of state and things like that. So that's one word that struck me. Another word was non-local. Have you ever heard that term? Non-local. No?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll feel warm. Yes.
Well, what's non-local then?
A consciousness.
That resides where? At what location? Is it a consciousness of Ron?
I can read it to you.
Right ahead. We got you on the roll.
And I said non-local consciousness. It's a growing body of empirical evidence suggested that the human consciousness is non-local. It is not confined to specific points in space, such as brains and bodies, or specific moments in time, as such the present.
Is that helpful, my friends? Where are we going with this? Okay, we spoke of, go ahead.
Well, my interpretation of that is non-local is it's beyond this human plane. It's
Yes.
beyond what we can think.
Yeah,
It's beyond what we can see. It's beyond what we can hear.
it's non-local. Stated more directly, it's everywhere. It's
Right.
not in one place.
Right.
It's not a form.
No.
It's beyond form. Is the body a form?
Yes.
Yeah,
So non-local couldn't be from a body, right?
right.
All right. So where is he going with this related to Edgar Casey? What is he saying Edgar Casey had the ability to do?
To tap into that consciousness.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And his main point was through meditation,
Right.
like quieting the mind.
So meditation is a form of attaining non-local consciousness.
Mhm.
Now, being everywhere, would you call it omnipresent?
Yes.
It's not local. You can't put it in a cubby hole. It's everywhere, right?
Right.
Mhm.
So now we're kind of talking about some sort of godlike entity. And it is omnipotent and also omniscient, right?
Yes.
Knows everything.
But
Kind
it
of
can't.
like the ultimate oracle.
Right. But it can be processed through an oracle.
It can be processed through an oracle or any other
Anybody. Right.
transmitter, from an oracle to a human being to whatever's tapped into it. And it can serve as a vehicle for communication. Are you with me?
And
Yes.
people who channel do that.
Another example of non-local consciousness. You hear that term he was using, non-local consciousness, a wisdom beyond anything contractions could see.
Yeah.
It can see everything because it is everywhere. And so do you see how smart Casey became when he went into a trance?
Yes.
He was able to achieve non-local awareness. And he was saying, you could see this was so weird, so superhuman, because Casey spent all of his life in the evangelical church and teaching the Bible and teaching Sunday school and strictly biblical. But when he'd go into these trances, he would transcend that and come back with teachings that didn't necessarily line up with the Bible. So that was Reverend Jim's little way of getting you to see all of these teachers, and you're already conceding they're saying the same things, maybe in different forms for different audiences. But I'm contending that the reason they say the same thing is because it's not coming from them, it's coming through them from a non-local awareness. They see clearly. and they can see in an integrated way because it's coming from a non-local view. Comments, and we'll start moving on. We only got a few minutes, right? Is this good? Do you enjoy this?
It's
Yeah.
something that comes through, but it's not through your thinking brain.
Precisely. There's something else here that's alive, that's bigger than we are, if we're thinking in terms of bodies, right?
Yep.
What is the body? The body is a fence the Son of God imagines that he's placed around himself to separate himself from himself. To separate his small s self from his capital S self. And the body doesn't want to hear that because the body's still trying to make separate heavens work. So much so that they become insane and obsessed, and it's very difficult for them to listen to reason anymore, right? I gotta have that separate heaven now. Come on, we can work this out. Work with me, work with me. All right, so that's the little tidbit for tonight before we get into our ACIM Talks study of A Course in Miracles and the 12-step program. Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll move on. All right. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to share screen like this. And then we're on page 17. And we're starting at paragraph 1 as a review before moving on into paragraph 2. That's not going to work. Bear with me. Now let's see how that does. Pretty good there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you can see, that's 16 and then 17. And then our first reader is Joan, number 2, Dee, number 3, Kathleen, number 4, Ron, number 5, Sherilyn. And so Joan, why don't you get us started here?
Okay. All program meetings and all Course in Miracles groups say that you have one problem. You may call it alcohol. You may call it ego. You can call it self-perception. You can call it determination to affront God. I'm not concerned with what you call it. All of it is a limited self-identity or an addiction to the necessity of the assertion of your limited consciousness mind. Does that make any sense? So here we come together in a sensible purpose of undergoing the miracle or the experience in our dedication to the certainty that the problem is not solvable. Don't analyze, utilize.
Does that make any sense? You see where I'm reading?
Mhm.
Does that make any sense? Does what make any sense? Everything that went before? in that paragraph?
Well, that phrase, an addiction to the necessity of the assertion of your limited consciousness mind. Through all of it, we don't know who we are. That's the problem.
I'm with you, Joan. She's saying you may call it this. If you call it alcohol, do y'all see where I'm reading?
Mhm.
You may call it alcohol, you may call it ego. I got alcohol because seems like when I think of 12 steps, I think about being an alcoholic. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But then he goes from a fairly narrow category to ego. That's much broader than we would think of. Like being an alcoholic is a narrower category than being an ego. We all have an ego, right?
Right.
Right.
You can call it self-perception. You can call it a determination to affront God and say, I want my own separate heaven. I'm not concerned with what you call it. All of it is a limited self-identity and a refusal. I'm addicted to the necessity of the assertion of my limited conscious mind. Does what make sense? That I only have one problem?
Mm-hmm.
You can call it this, you can call it that, you can call it a lot of things. But I only have one problem. That's what I'm getting out of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So here we come together in the sensible purpose of undergoing the miracle or the experience in our dedication to the certainty that the problem is not solvable. It is not a legitimate problem because I'm not what I think I am. All of the problems are coming from me not being what I think I am. What do you think?
I think you're pretty close, pretty right.
All right, well, let's see, right? Our next reader is Joan.
I just read.
I'm sorry, is D. And it ends, don't analyze, utilize. So let's see if we can address that. But D, why don't you read a little more?
Here's how it works. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Here it is. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided individually in your own mind that you want what we have, never mind that you are able to discern it by your own mechanisms. The decision is that you are willing to become teachers of God and declare an association of yourself that is giving you joy and happiness. You're looking at other associations who are ready to give up their inventory of total death and sickness and are asking, as when you came to the program, how did you get this? How did you come to know this? This is the mechanism your teaching as a 12-step program and A Course in Miracles.
Thanks, Steve. What does he mean? Here's how it works. Is that in the big book or something? Or
It's in the big book.
Yeah, it's in the big book.
Mhm.
what's that about?
How it works is how you work the 12 steps.
Okay. He says there are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. Is that something that's related to how it works? If any have read that section in the big book, is that what it says in how it works, or is he moving on to discuss something else now? Do any of you know at all?
I think this is something else, like there are those who maybe
Yes.
are bipolar or have some kind of an
Mm-hmm.
emotional or mental disorder. But
Okay.
it says they do recover if they have the capacity to be honest.
And what is
They have to own it.
yeah, here it is, our stories. And what does he mean to be honest?
To tell the truth.
And what is the honest truth?
The truth is that I cannot do this by myself.
Yeah, my life has become unmanageable. That's the most honest thing. What is it? Marianne Williamson says, remember, it's your best thinking that's gotten you here. So, being honest, my best thinking will not work. Is there another way of thinking? Can I use someone else's thinking and give up? You know, the course says, based on your track record, resign immediately as your own teacher. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
So that's what I think is being said here. The bottom line is, if you'd like to know about this miracle that we've experienced, the miracle is that we gave up our own thinking. And wonderful things have happened. Comments?
So we've turned it over to the Holy Spirit, our thinking.
Yes.
The truth is we don't know a lot. There's a lot we do not know, and the Holy Spirit is with us to help us find out what the truth is.
And actually, literally show us the truth. See, if I say I need do nothing except let life unfold and participate accordingly, it's going to be full of lessons that lead to salvation. But in order to have this occur, I have to remove my thinking. Do you see how, again, it's undoing? So if I can remove allegiance to the local conscious awareness and turn it over to a non-local consciousness awareness, I'll be turning my guidance over to a much smarter, wiser teacher, merely because it knows everything and is all is present everywhere at once. Couldn't I get better advice that way? Because certainly my mind wasn't working out. It was my best thinking that got me so far. I'm ready for a change. And now we're back to willingness, right, Dee?
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to do to access a non-local conscious awareness?
Meditation is what helped so many.
But that's the process. What's
Yes.
the goal of meditation?
To be still and erase yourself utterly. To be open
All right,
to
so
allow the higher to come in.
do you see how many weeks we've said erase yourself utterly?
Mhm.
Isn't that the way to prayer on Tuesday night?
Mhm.
Isn't that the way to non-local conscious? Isn't that the way to access a non-local consciousness?
Yes.
So do you see why, in my estimation, I thought that was the perfect phrase. It really got at what resonates with me about the principles of the course. And then I see its alignment. What was it? We talked about Hawkins, Sir David Hawkins.
Mm-hmm. Power
And
versus force. Yeah.
yeah, he talked about the kinesiology and how you vibrate, but the idea was to resonate higher, we have to remove negative illusions. I don't know if I'm making that point very well. Anybody? What we're trying to say, to me, is that this is a process of reversal. It's not creative. The whole thing we're after is realization of what was always true.
Right.
And the way for that to come to the forefront is to remove what's not true. Is that a definition of forgiveness?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the more I can remove what's not true, the more what is true can merely show forth. What do you think, Sister White? I see you in a pensive mood. I'm not giving you a headache, am
Not at all. I think it's a
I?
very wise statement. I like what you said. Makes sense to me.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Well, let's move on. We're up to Kathleen. And hold on. We're on page 18, believe it or not.
First of all, you have to want it, don't you? You have to be able to see the difference between the pain that you are in and the apparent joy that this association is experiencing. At the first thing he will tell you in his genuine association is what? He didn't have anything to do with it. Do you see? All programs will teach. I had nothing to do with it. I gave up and I had the miraculous experience of the non-need to continue to sedate myself. It was a miracle. I want the mechanism, which is the 12-step program, of continuing to have that experience. I want to have it all the time.
Comments? What did he have to do?
You had to lose the non-need for continuing with alcohol.
So,
You had to develop the non-need for it, I should say.
yeah, but how did that come about? What did he have to do to develop the non-need?
I
Willingness
gave
to
up, I
give myself up.
surrendered.
Get out of the way, right?
Right.
I simply had to turn it over to a higher power.
Mhm.
And what does the course say I need to do? Nothing? Doesn't the course say that section, I need do nothing? And what did this testimony say? I had nothing to do with it. So we get out of the way, we turn our lives over to a higher power, and this miracle happens. And I didn't have to do anything but just follow its guidance through willingness, even if that willingness came out of desperation. But the more I do it and see the results, the more I become willing through intention now.
Yeah, it's giving the need up to be in control.
And
Yes.
being so grateful you want it to continue.
Mhm.
I want to have that guidance all the time where I'm not trying to be in control anymore. Thank you, God. What a burden lifted. That's quite different than the world teaches, isn't it?
Yes.
Mhm.
More comments there?
To me, when we give up the need to be in control, that's what puts us in control.
It's a
We're controlling
paradox.
that need.
Yes, it's a paradox, but a good one. Thank goodness we found out how it works. And it all starts with a little willingness. Now, you guys here, you've had a little willingness for a long time. And you still seem willing to me. It must be based on a track record of better results. I mean, personally, I only do it because it works. All right. No disrespect to the church, the Bible, any of the holy books. But if it didn't work, I probably wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
All right. Let's see if we can grab one more. Is that okay tonight?
Mhm.
Yes, it's my turn.
It's your turn. Go right ahead.
Now, if you decide that you want what we have and are willing to go to some lengths to get it, oh, it doesn't say some lengths. No. It doesn't say compromise. It says are willing to go to any lengths to see it. I'm not sure what that C stands for.
I'm not either. Why don't you just
I'm just
keep going?
keep reading.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, obviously, the guy who is going to continue, if you really taught this, who is going to continue to demand attention to his addiction will say, I'm not willing to go to any lengths. I can still solve my problem. This is the basis of the teaching. But if you're willing to go to any lengths, you're ready to take certain steps. You're ready to make particular applications of the necessity for the miracle in the workbook. These are steps, aren't they? In the workbook. Now, some of them are going to refuse to do. Some of them will be easier if you do than others because you have a tenacity to continue to verify the necessity to exist in time and die, and that's very inherent in you. All your human memories verify your addiction to self-possessive termination.
Whoa. He doesn't mince any words here.
Mhm.
Now, what does he mean? Now, if you decide that you want what we have and are willing to go to some lengths to get it, oh, it doesn't say some lengths. No, it doesn't say compromise. It says are willing to go to any lengths to get it. Isn't that like above all else I want to see?
Mhm.
Above all else, I want to see things differently. Do you see my example of your being able to see content in two different forms, right? It was two different forms of saying the same thing. I can't half step through this. I can't make any exceptions. It will work in proportion to the amount of non-exceptions I can allow. It'll work 100% if you do it in a non-dual way, in a monistic way. Isn't that like it'll work if you work it?
Yep.
Do you see how we're just saying the same thing in different ways? And do you see how it's easy for brothers and sisters to get confused? Because they still think the form determines the content. The form may or may not convey the content. The form may convey the exact opposite content. Like if I were to say, you know, I'm friends to all you people. Did my words convey clear content? You know, I like most people like you. What's the problem? The form was there, right?
Mhm.
But the content communication was a little bit shaky. So there was not integrity, consistency between the form and the content. Okay. So make sure our content is clear. Make sure that we're speaking from a loving heart and that our words convey that in the appropriate manner. And just try and be true to ourselves in our communication, right? Is that another way of saying be honest?
Yeah.
Is that one of the characteristics of a teacher of God?
Yep.
Mm.
Okay, so it's after 8. Are you satisfied with how we're doing? We made it all the way to page 18.
Mhm.
And we finished paragraph 1, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
But Miss Newman would say next week we should start page 18, paragraph 1, right?
It helps me
Okay.
It helps me too.
get
And
my bearings.
I hope you're enjoying this. We're only on page 18. What was it? 44 pages?
Mhm.
But it's holding my attention. I find that I'm learning a lot from it. What do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
It's
All right.
really good, Jim.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, listen, we'll continue here next week and keep smiling, right?
Right.
Because we can see something to smile about. I wish you a good week coming up. I'm going to stop sharing and we can see each other here and say good night. I'll see you next time, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
All right,
Namaste. Have a-
namaste, everyone.